Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first ever reading vlog for the first supernatural novel, Nevermore. I'm recording this at the end of the reading vlog experience because I forgot to record an intro. And I mainly just want to say, for those who don't know, the first supernatural book is called Nevermore. It takes place between series 2, episode 8 and 9, I think it is, or it's either 8 and 9, 9 and 10. Crossroad Blues and Croatoan. And it features Sam and Dean as they go to New York on a lead given to them from Ash, and they investigate a haunting, and some other things happen whilst they're there. I just want to say up front that the quality of this video isn't going to be great. I recorded a lot of the little updates I did on my iPad. I don't have like a vlog camera. I don't have the money for that. I don't have the need for it once I start doing a lot more vlogs in the future. So I just did it on my iPad, which is old. It's an old iPad. It works great, but the camera's just not perfect. So the quality of it's not going to be like 1080p HD, it's just going to be whatever it recorded in, so I hope that's okay. Some of the lighting is very questionable. I'll just go jump straight to the reading vlog. Let me know down below what you thought of it, and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this vlog for future supernatural content. Hi guys, so I don't know what the quality of this is going to be like. I'm recording this on my iPad in bed. Sorry if the quality is going to turn out to be really crappy, but I've just got into bed. I have got, Nevermore. And yeah, I watched the last episode today, Crossroad Blues. So I'm thinking that it's going to include stuff about the Crossroad Demon, probably, because why else would it take place specifically between this episode and the next? So my thoughts are, even though it doesn't mention it in the blurb, maybe it just has like a little references to the last episode, rather than it like having a storyline all about that. So I'll check in with you maybe after I've read a few chapters, if I'm not falling asleep. And yeah, hopefully it's a good book. I've heard mixed things about the supernatural books in general. And I just hope that this video's okay. I've got my Cheshire Cat friend. And I'm trying to hold my iPad up with two hands, but my arms are already hurting. I'm so weak. But yeah, I hope it's okay. And I'll hopefully see you in a bit. Okay, so I haven't even started the book yet. I've just read the acknowledgements, or at least I started to read them. And there was one that I wanted to read because I thought it was really fitting for the show. And so one of the acknowledgements is to Eric Kripke, who could have just done a show about two pretty guys who shoot monsters in the head. I mean, they are pretty, let's be honest. But has given us something far more than that in Supernatural. It's a show about two brothers. It's a show about family. It's a show about demons, both physical and internal. It's a show about the importance of music. And it's a show about people. And I thought that was really great because, like, I just knew Supernatural was about two hot guys that shot a lot of things with shotguns, like ghosts and demons and whatnot, but it really is more than that. And I think, I apologise if I can't hold this camera straight. It really is a show that's like about emotion and what these boys go through, and it's there's a lot more to it. And I think people who don't know Supernatural think it's just about these two hot guys that shoot things in the face, and whilst that is a huge part of it, the emotion that comes through and the feelings they deal with are also like the driving force behind why they do what they do and why fans are in love with it. So I'm nervous that this book's not going to hit that well. I don't know. Because I know from reading Buffy books in the past that sometimes the characters don't always come across the same way because it's not like the set of professional writers writing it. So we'll see. I'll check in with you in a bit. I said that last time, and I jumped straight back in, so hopefully this time I'll just get with you in a bit. Bye. Okay, so I've only read the first chapter. I'm not sure how I feel right now. I'm not sure if I like the writing style already. I mean, I'm going to stick with it and read it all for you. And it's only a few hundred pages, so I'm only, as you can probably see, like small pages. So even if it's not the easiest to read, it won't take me long to read, I don't think. But I don't know, it just seems to be it's just not clicking with me right now. But the first chapter was weird. So there will be spoilers throughout. So if you don't want to know anything about the book or you want to read it, I'd advise not watching. But the first chapter revolved around these two college kids that basically they're walking home from, they like work and they print magazines, like a college bi-weekly magazine thing. And they're walking home and they're attacked by a orangutan. Well, they said they're like, is it a orangutan? Is it a baboon? And they spent longer than I thought was necessary debating whether it's an orangutan or a baboon. And then they both just got killed by it. But then there was this other guy nearby who looked like he was doing some sort of spell to probably like make it crazy. And then he knocked the orangutan out with a dart and then called the police and ran off. So right now I've got a guy who is making orangutans crazy to kill people. Okay, well, not what I expected from the first chapter of a supernatural book, but hey, I'm assuming there's going to be more going into it because the blurb mentions like Edgar Allan Poe and some other things, and this guy's like 2 down, 2 to go. So we'll see what he wants and why orangutan was his choice to kill people. But yeah, strange. So I've actually only read about 32 pages, but I'm actually getting really tired really quickly, so I'm actually going to go to sleep now, I think. But it's actually already picking up. I've only read about 2.5 chapters, and normally I wouldn't stop reading in the middle of a chapter, but you just feel like your eyes were dropping a little bit. But the storyline's definitely picking up a little bit already, so chapter 2 started with Sam and Dean, and they were like checking out of a motel, and it kind of like rehashed some of what happened in the show. I think like maybe for people who haven't watched as much of the show, or at least just to kind of remind people where the show's at this point. So it talks about the fact that they are wanted for murders in Louisiana, or at least Dean is, and that he was like framed by the shapeshifter. And it talked about how the Impala was damaged a few months ago, and that Dean's so connected with it now more than ever because he had to rebuild it from scratch. It also talked about the fact that they've lost their dad's been mentioned. And then, so they got a call from Ellen, actually, and that was surprising me because for some reason I didn't think that they would be in it. I don't know why. I just thought it'd be a Sam and Dean story. But they got a call from Ellen about a job in New York, about a haunting of one of Ash's friends. Because they mentioned New York, Sam was like, oh, I've been investigating this thing as well. And they had this file, which had some stories about one guy they found was bricked up in a basement, and 2 people were beaten to death by an orangutan. And so essentially what he kind of said was that they're stories from Edgar Allan Poe. Apparently people die in Edgar Allan Poe stories in these various ways. So that makes more sense why there was like an orangutan at the very beginning. So it seems like that there's these 2 storylines that are hopefully going to merge at some point. One about a haunting, one about various people getting killed like by Edgar Allan Poe stories. And yeah, it's interesting. They're doing a good job so far of Sam being like the slightly more wanting to talk about things, Dean being a bit more close-minded, Dean being very frustrated, like he's getting stuck in traffic at the moment, and he's getting really frustrated with all the cars on the road. And yeah, I'm definitely getting more into like the style of the book and the writing the different characters well, but it's very clear they've got a good knowledge of the show, they've got a good memory of the show, what Keith does, and he really wants it to take place at a very specific point. I still wonder if the Crossroad Demon was going to get mentioned, because like I said, they've mentioned Jessica dying, they mentioned the Impala getting destroyed, and quite a few things that have pinpointed like the timeline, which is interesting. So I'll catch up with you tomorrow when I've read some more. Night, guys. Hi, sorry for the really rubbish angle. I tried like holding my iPad up, but I had my flu jab in this arm today, and my arm is killing me. So holding stuff up for any period of time is really painful. But it's the next day after recording the last little bit. I can't really remember what I said because I was falling asleep, but I've read about a quarter of the book now. Oh, also this is my living room. There's my pop-up tree. It takes like 10 seconds to put together. So until I get like a proper house I own, and then I get a proper tree, this will have to do. You can see some of my horror artwork just there. But I just wanted to give you an update. I've read about a quarter of the book now. I've only read about 6 chapters, but some of the chapters are pretty long. So I've read about a quarter of the book. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. There's definitely 2 very distinct storylines going on. So I think I mentioned last night that I thought the storylines were going to converge, but I don't think they are. So we've got one storyline, which is about the haunting involving Ash's friend. So he's got a friend who's in like a 70s cover rock band, which Dean fucking loves. And they have some sort of ghost. So he said that they perform every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night at this bar. And then when they get back to this house that they live in, there's this screaming, wailing of this ghost.
And it's only on nights they perform. There was one night where they couldn't perform on one night. Of the 3 that they always perform on, the ghost didn't appear that night. So it's very clear that whatever's happening with this ghost, it's only when they perform, which is really odd, but I'm intrigued to see where that one goes. And it's great because Dean's like in love with this guy's house, and they're actually staying there at the moment. Like the guy offered them a room for the night, or separate rooms for the night, and Sam was about to go, no, it's okay. But Dean was like, yeah, we'll stay here because he's got like a huge record collection, he's got instruments, and it's basically everything Dean loves because the book really does go into his love for music and mentions a lot of bands, some that I've heard of, some that I've not. So there's that storyline about this ghost and the punk and the rock band, and there's also the storyline about the Edgar Allan Poe stories that seem to be coming to life. We've not had a vast amount of progress on that storyline as of yet. The main thing that really happened was they went to the zoo, the Bronx Zoo, to interview someone who worked there about the orangutan that escaped, because that's where the orangutan was from. And it was really, really funny actually, because the chapter kind of took place from the zookeeper's point of view, which initially was a little bit odd. I think she was called Lisa Hemsworth, Claire Hemsworth, and it was like from her point of view and learning a little bit about her life. And I was like, okay, it's a strange way to put it, but okay. And it was quite funny because she was doing a job, and she turned around, and it was the hottest man I'd ever seen, and it was Sam. And she talks about how he had like a handsome friend, but his friends, they pretended they were from the National Geographic and were investigating the story a little bit. And they talked about how she was really in love with Sam, and he's quite charming, and he's smart because she went to go to law school. He went to law school because they talk about the lies and stuff. And she didn't really like the other person, who obviously we know as Dean, because he was a bit smarmy. He wasn't like how do I word this? It's like the way Sam could be quite, he brings people's worries down because he's quite comforting, he's quite reassuring. Dean's not really that. He's like quite flirty and stuff, so that was quite funny. And the funniest bit really was they were talking about the orangutan, and she was like, "Oh yeah, Dean escaped the other night or whatever." He's like, "Sorry." She's like, "Yeah, the orangutan's called Dean." That was really funny because he was like proper offended by it. So there's these 2 main storylines which I'm not really sure where they're gonna go. Sam's been to visit the house that Paul lived in, where his wife died, and he thinks that might be something to do with it, but they're not really sure yet. But mainly the things I wanted to talk about briefly were like, I'm really liking the characterization of the 2 characters because they're in New York City, which is really interesting because it's talking a lot about how they're getting frustrated with the traffic, how they can't find anywhere, and all the roads are confusing, the buildings are confusing, and it kind of really made me realize, yeah, all the episodes of Supernatural are always like in like small cities, small towns, in the back roads, in like the dusty roads, like the roads that people don't want to go down. So having them in this like huge city is really foreign to them, and they don't really know how to navigate their way around, and they're both getting really confused. And that's a very interesting thing that I've never really thought about. The writer's doing a really good job again of setting the scene of where they are in the storyline, and aside for a very good reason, but I'll get to that in a moment. They talked about Jess, and they talked about Cassie, and Sarah's been mentioned. So it's very clear that it's taking place where it is, and that they've watched the show. Sorry, I know the camera work and the lighting all the way throughout this vlog is going to be worse than I normally have it, because I'm normally pretty bad at that, but I'm just literally just making this up as I go along. I apologise. But the main reason that aside is because I've had season 2 spoiled for me by this book, at least part of season 2. So the reason that I thought it was going to take place in between the 2 episodes, and the reason that I wanted to read it here and now, was because I thought it was going to take place in between the 2 episodes, and also it would act like people read it in between the 2, and that's not the case. It's obviously got knowledge of future episodes put into it, which kind of pissed me off a little bit. So there was this really interesting part where Dean was having nightmares of various creepy stuff, and then he had a nightmare. It was quite interesting because he had a nightmare of Jessica on the ceiling, like he did, like Jessica was at the end of the first episode. But then Jessica turned into like Joe and Ellen and Sam and the mum, like various people were on this ceiling. Sam then turned into like had the yellow eyes and was like, "You need to kill me, Dean." I was like, "Oh, okay, random, okay." I just thought it was part of the dream. But then I thought maybe it was part of Dean's fear that of all this psychic stuff that was going on with Sam and the other kids that were maybe turning evil and killing people, that was something that you have to lead to. But then it spoiled what John told him. John said, you have to protect Sam, and if not, basically you have to kill him. But don't tell Sam I've told you this. It's along those lines. It didn't say specifically what he said, but it kind of said that sort of thing. And I was like, literally my jaw hit the floor. I was like, have I just read a spoiler for season 2? Like, I just assumed the book, even though it was written after the fact, I presumed it would maybe slide into the continuity in the sense that it would take place as if viewers were reading it in the chronological order, which I know in hindsight it's probably a really stupid thing to think. I should have just read it after the season finished, maybe, because I know the second one in this series of books, I think it's called Witch's Canyon, takes place directly after this book. But depending on how the rest of the book pans out, I might wait till the end of the season to read it because I don't want spoilers. But then again, like, what more could they spoil? Because Dean has this knowledge at this moment in the show, so that makes sense that he could think about it to himself. Because he did. It was all like a inner monologue, and it was very interesting. But it just upset me a little bit that I had a spoiler because I just didn't expect it from the book, and it's kind of naive of me to think that, I suppose. But hey, so that's what John told him. I'm intrigued to find out in the show when they actually reveal it and properly what he actually said, if there was more to it than that, and just interpret it a bit more then. But yeah, spoiler alert, Jesus. So yeah, I'm interested to see where this book goes, which the storyline with the Edgar Allan Poe stuff is interesting to me a little bit more than this Rocker one, just because it's just like, it just appears to be like a dead fan maybe, that just appears on nights they perform. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'll check in with you when I've read maybe another quarter of the book, or when I spoil myself again. And yeah, see you then.
Oh my god, my hair is a mess. Okay guys, it's a couple of days later. I've not been feeling great, so I haven't been reading, but I'm up to page 145, about halfway through, and the book's alright. I feel like I'm going forward and backwards, and I don't really know how to explain fully what my thoughts are. So I feel like the book it's like a good episode of the show, like an okay episode of the show, just an okay episode. Like, there's two very different stories going on, so whilst, like, at least so far I'm up to in the show, there's always like one ghost story or one monster story, and that's it for the episode, whereas this has got two, so I feel like it's like an amalgamation of two different episodes, like the one about the ghost in the rock band's house and the one about Edgar Allan Poe. But neither of them feel like they'd be great episodes of the show. Put them together makes it okay, but I'm not massively invested in anything so far. The best parts of, because I made a few little notes, the best parts of the book so far have just been like random character moments. Like, there was a scene when this band member, that's house they're staying in, when Dean's like obsessed with all the music and the records that he's got, they went to watch the band play, and he was really excited to watch them. And then when they got to the bar to watch them play, Dean was just like, this band is terrible. Like, they do covers of songs that he loves and absolutely hates it. And there was a chapter in the bar where he was listening to the awful music, but flirting with this bartender who was kind of into it, but kind of not. And there was this other girl that was coming on to Dean who was like the cousin of the guy in the bar, and he wasn't massively into her, but Sam was having a good time because Dean was kind of uncomfortable. And some moments like that are quite fun. It's just overall, it feels like the main storyline isn't really going very fast. Like, the ghost stuff and the attacks on people in New York, they're not really making a lot of progress. Like, when I spoke to you last time, I was about a quarter of the way through, so I've read about that much-ish, thereabouts, since I last spoke to you, and they haven't really made any progress in any of the main storylines. In terms of like the Edgar Allan Poe one, all they figured out really is that it's about cycles of the moon, and there was something in John's journal about it in the back, but it was to do with spells that aren't real, but this person's putting on real spells,
and they figured out something on a map. So now I say that there has been progress, but for the sake of about 70 pages, not a lot of progress has been made. They just figured out where one of the next attacks might be. And also, with the ghost storyline, the band performed that night. They went back to the house to see if they could see the ghost. And they saw it. It was a blonde woman, but like fake blonde, dyed blonde, in like a rock t-shirt. And they shot her with rock salt and she disappeared for the night. It's kind of like... It's interesting. I'm enjoying reading it because I'm enjoying Sam and Dean, and it's very clear whose chapters what. Like, if it's a Dean chapter, he thinks about music and he thinks about women a lot and that kind of stuff. And the Sam chapter, he had quite a long kind of inner discussion with himself about like theology and heaven and hell and how there must be a hell because demons come from hell and there's reapers that take you to a certain place. And he mentioned how they've told him about Jess being in hell and how the Crossroad Demon, ding ding ding, finally he mentioned the Crossroad Demon, talked to Dean about the fact that John's in hell. So he talks about there must be a heaven because there must be a hell. And so it's very clear that they have two very different mindsets and ways of thinking. And the book does well at that. It just feels like that the main storylines aren't really going very fast. Oh, the Cycle of the Moon stuff as well is apparently a resurrection spell. So they kind of fought around the idea that maybe someone's trying to resurrect maybe Edgar Allan Poe? Or was that just me reading into it? I don't know. That's where I'm thinking it's going to go. But maybe that's just because recently I had the episode where they fought the ghost of like H.H. Holmes. So now that I know they will happily tackle like big characters, that maybe that's a route they're going to go down. But yeah, that is not a massive amount to say. The book's good if you like Supernatural. So far, I'd say pick it up. It might change in the next 140 odd pages, and I will update you maybe when I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I'm just hoping that at this stage the book's like fine, and I'm hoping that it just kind of picks up the pace a little bit, and that we find out more exciting stuff about these two different things that are going on. And I'm happy for them to be separate, but sometimes it's like, because they're separate, it feels like a long time in between the next kind of update. So I'll catch up with you in a bit.
Good morning, everybody. It's been quite a few days since I last did an update. I just haven't been in a reading mood. I go through weird slumps when I read books. Like, I read like loads of days in a row, or read like hours a day, and then I won't read for a couple of weeks, and it's just a bit weird. But it's been a few days since I've been reading, not been feeling too great, so I'm finally good to get back into the book. I've read up to page 240, so I'm about 3/4 of the way through, if not a bit more. And the book's definitely picking up. I am enjoying it a bit more now than I was. The two storylines are definitely reaching their conclusions, or at least building up to the big final twists. And there's been some interesting perspectives on this book. Like, what I didn't realise when I started reading it was I thought it would all take place from the perspective of Sam and Dean. And I think I mentioned in one of the previous updates that one of the chapters took place was the perspective of a zookeeper. But they've had a few different ones now. They had one that took place from the perspective of this killer who's killing people, like using Edgar Allan Poe stories as like an inspiration. That wasn't a whole chapter, it was only part of a chapter, but there was that. And there was also a part of a chapter that took place from the perspective of the ghost, the banshee that's haunting the house. And that was really interesting because we found out that she's haunting the guy that lives there because she wants him to love her, and that a reaper tried to take her when she died, but she refused to move on, and just refused and refused and refused, and that led to a spirit staying, and her will to speak to him and communicate with him that led to the ghost activities. And that kind of reminded me of, if anyone's watched The Haunting of Bly Manor, the story about the lady who used to live in the house, how she died but refused to move on, and that's how the lady in the lake kind of came about. We still don't know who killed her yet, but we've got an inkling, I think. Well, it's hinting that, because she used to date one of the guys that was in the band called Aldo, and even Sam and Dean are saying, so we're pretty much assuming that he killed her, right? And maybe buried her in the house or behind the house or whatever. But it doesn't all fully add up, and I think it's maybe too obvious that he killed her, because they've already revealed that. So maybe it's going to turn out Manfred, whose house it is, killed her. But again, that seems too obvious as well. But I mean, my theory, as someone who's watching Supernatural and knows the twist they put in, that main of the suspect for me is the bartender. So there's this bartender that Dean's been flirting with a lot, and she can tell she likes it. She's pretty, like, she doesn't just flirt with him because he's hot. She's quite, not forthright, but I like her attitude, and she's quite funny, and she doesn't just flirt with him because he's there, and she's used to guys flirting with her, but she's really nice, and she admits that she likes him, but doesn't want a one night stand, but also knows that she can only have like a one night stand with him because it's Dean and he's going to be leaving town soon. So in my money's on her just because she's like the left field, like the out of the box twist, but so far there's no reason why it would be her, other than it for the sake of a twist. With the Edgar Allan Poe stuff, we've discovered that the rituals are all taking place on a different quarter of the moon cycle, and also all things are like the climax of Edgar Allan Poe story. So like the orangutan was revealed as the killer at the end of one story. At the end of another story, a guy was put behind some bricks in a wall. And the one we'd just kind of been involved with was the Telltale Heart, about someone who was buried under the floorboards. But yeah, so they're just they think they discovered who the killer is, but it wasn't them, and we don't know who the killer is yet. But it's probably going to be somebody that we know. I'm not sure. It seems like they are trying to resurrect Edgar Allan Poe, so I'd be interested to know if they managed to resurrect him. And that's like Sam Dean have to kill Edgar Allan Poe, because that'd be quite funny. Bit weird, but funny. The other thing that I want to mention briefly, my hands are written on it all like this, was they've talked about the dad quite a lot, which is really interesting. And they come to the conclusion that the dad doesn't. Whilst we thought the dad did a good job of raising them as hunters, there's various gaps in their knowledge that they're like starting to realise. Like, it touched on the finale of season 1 of Supernatural, when Bobby said to him, well, surely you can tell the difference between a demon and someone that's possessed by a demon. And they didn't really think about it at the time, but in this book it's kind of hints on the fact that, well, we should have known that. We should have been taught that. I know Dad was meant to be such a great hunter, but he didn't teach us to tell the difference between a demon and someone that's possessed by a demon. And there's various things that they're talking about, how they're kind of discovering that the dad maybe didn't teach them enough, and how they're meeting loads of people, particularly in this book, where they're like, oh yeah, we used to know your dad, we used to know your dad. And it's happening in the show quite a lot as well, like with Ellen and other people, where they're discovering that the dad had all these people that he knew and all these secrets that he kept. And from that, they're discovering that they have a really good reputation, but the dad does as well. But maybe it's just this book, but they're talking about how their reputation's probably better than the dad's. I don't know, it's interesting to think about. My arms are starting to really hurt, so I'm going to check in with you again when I finish the book and see how it all wraps up. At the minute, it's still like a 3.5 out of 4 stars, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Good, not the best book ever, but I'm enjoying it, so I'll see you when I finished the book. Okay, guys, so I finished Supernatural, the first novel, Nevermore, and it was good. I feel like the mistake I made with this book is I read it in too many parts, and that's my own fault. I feel like because it's just a short book, like it's just over 300 pages. I say each page isn't, might not be able to say that in a light, hasn't got a lot of text on it really. It's probably a book that's better to be read in like 1 or 2 like bursts, whereas the mistake I made was reading it in about 4 or 5 different sessions, and that's just because I wasn't in a reading mood, so to speak. So I was reading it in little bits when I had the mood for it. So yeah, if you want to read it, I'd recommend reading it maybe like in one night or just in 2 like halves, because I think the storyline, because it's, how do I word this? Because it felt like I was reading an episode of the show. It wasn't like reading like an exciting, over-the-top movie version where there's a lot of stuff going on. It was very much like an episode of the show. So it's probably good to read it in a short burst, because it wasn't like the most exciting book in the world. Like, it doesn't change any of the supernatural lore. Yes, it spoiled season 2 from me a little bit, but that's probably my own fault for reading it. But just going back to the storylines before I do a final wrap-up, if you don't want to know how things ended, obviously don't watch this bit. But in terms of the storyline with the banshee that was haunting the house, the girl Roxy, it wasn't the person who I thought it was going to be. It turned out to be the killer. It was like another of the bandmates who, one person thought someone else was house sitting, but then it turned out they'd asked someone else to do it, and they were having sex with Roxy as well. And she wanted to be a couple with them, so she was actually shouting love me" at this Eddie dude. But they had an argument because he didn't want to be with her, he just wanted to have sex with her, and she tripped and died, and that's kind of the story that he ended with. We don't know whether that's true or not, we just know that's the story he's going with. And so she was haunting the house to sort of be with Eddie. Obviously, when all that came out, Eddie got arrested. And for me, that storyline was a little disappointing because Eddie was in the story in the background, but barely. Like, he wasn't a big presence. So my thought was never to go with him. It was always, for me, between Manfred and Aldo, which are the two that it focused on, the guy on the house and the guy who was Roxy's boyfriend. Obviously, we didn't know that she was sleeping with other people as well. So yeah, it was just the Eddie guy, who was someone that was barely in it. He was fine. She's now at rest because he's been arrested. And in terms of the Edgar Allan Poe stuff, that was slightly more interesting. The person was trying to resurrect Poe, and it turned out that it was the professor. I don't know what I mentioned in my little parts because it's been a few days and stuff, but they went to see. There's the guy that ran the Edgar Allan Poe website who they thought it was, and they also went to see like a university professor who was like a specialist on Poe as well. And it turned out it was the professor, and he tried to kill the website guy as part of like the last ritual to resurrect Edgar Allan Poe. And he was doing this because there's a lot of discourse and discussions and arguments between Edgar Allan Poe specialists and fans about how he died and various different things about his life. And he wanted to bring Edgar Allan Poe back to life so that they could have a discussion and find out the truth about all these things. So he was doing it from an academic perspective, but obviously going about it by murdering people. With the help of the policewoman, they stopped that, the detective. Yeah. They stopped it pretty quickly. Like, it wasn't a big, huge scene. It kind of ended in like 3 pages. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I thought that storyline was probably more interesting than the ghost in the house one because it just had like more murders, more possibilities. Edgar Allan Poe might come back at the end. They might have to like do battle with him. That could have been cool. But yeah, and then it wraps up with, let me read my notes. It wraps up with like 2 storylines left open. So one is the Detective McBain gives Sam and Dean a case file in the Grand Canyon for another case to go to. And I know that's the next supernatural novel. Is about, I think it's called Witch's Canyon. And it's about some supernatural stuff happening in the Grand Canyon. I haven't got that book yet. Whether I read it or not depends on how well this video does. If people want to see it. If they do, I'll probably get it next year and read it at the start of the year sometime. I'll probably make more of an effort to read it quicker and get more... Because it was a short book. When I was reading it, I was flying through it. I just kept... I was really busy the past few weeks, so probably make more of an effort to kind of read it in like 2-3 sessions and get it done really quickly. So that storyline was left open, and also the final bit was Roxy kind of realising that it was all good now, she could go to rest. But there's like quite a bit in the middle of that where an agent Hendrickson came to see the police officer to say, "You know Sam and Dean, I'm investigating them." So my theory is he's someone that's actually going to be in either series 2 or 3 of the show, maybe later series 2, as someone who is investigating the boys and their whereabouts and their actions and their movements and stuff. I was like, that might be one of those things where you've watched the show and then you pick up the book, you're like, yes, Agent Hendrickson, that fits in with all the storylines that are going on in series 2. The fact that he shows up and he's investigating them, that makes sense, that ties it all in. Obviously for me, I don't know, because I haven't watched the rest of series 2. What I will probably do, if I do any more supernatural books, if you enjoy it, is finish the series that it's about before I read it, because it depends on storyline. But like I say, for those who might have just skipped to the end, this book spoiled series 2, and it spoiled what Dean was told by John in the hospital. Now, it makes sense that Dean would think about that because it's Dean's knowledge, but to me, as someone reading it in order chronologically, I didn't know that information. So in future, it might be worth reading it, whenever I'd finish the series. But overall, I'd say the book was strong. I think there were some things that I couldn't put my finger on what I wasn't enjoying, and I figured out towards the end. I think what it is the author clearly has a lot of knowledge of pop culture and music of the type that Dean would like, 70s, 80s rock, that kind of stuff. So much so that at times it felt like it was crammed down my throat. Like, whenever it was Dean's chapters, he was talking about the music that he liked, the music that he thought about, the artists that he likes, the music that he's playing on the radio, the music that he's playing on the records, the music he's playing on the car. It was a lot. And it was like, I get it, you know these bands, you know the songs, you know what's popular, but you don't need to keep going on about it. It was a bit too pop culture-y. It was a lot of that, and that kind of took me out a little bit, because I was like, even Dean on the show doesn't constantly talk about music. Now and again he does. Like in Crossroad Blues, he talks about Robert Anthony, somebody who was like the musician who made the deal with the Crossroads demon. But he doesn't constantly go on about it. So it was just a lot. Let's say overall it was good. It was like an alright episode of the show, as I mentioned in a previous update. It was enjoyable. It was quick. There was 2 distinct storylines, which is unusual for the show. Normally it's 1. And they never crossed paths, which I thought they would. Like I thought it would end with maybe someone was trying to resurrect her for some reason rather than Poe. And that's why the 2 storylines would kind of become under the one thing. But they didn't. It was clearly the Haunted storyline and the Edgar Allan Poe storyline. They were both good. They were never great. I'd say overall the book for me is like a 3 out of 5 stars, but enjoyable. The best part about it really is the Sam and Dean characterization and the chapters, the sections where we're inside their mind, thinking how they think, and thinking about their brothers, the way they differently think about each other, and how Sam laughs at things that he knows make Dean feel uncomfortable, and Dean's always moaning that Sam doesn't leave him alone to flirt with girls, or doesn't know the music that he likes, and all that kind of stuff. So I would recommend it, definitely. I'd be interested to hear from someone who has read the books what you thought of it, because I've not read any reviews or anything. I might go read some Goodreads reviews later. But yeah, overall, that was Supernatural, first novel, Nevermore. For those who don't know, it takes place in between Season 2, Crossroad Blues, and Croatoan, which is where I'm doing my reactions, so I'm reading them in order. Let me know what you thought of this reading vlog in the comments below, if you enjoyed it or not, or what I can improve on if I do it again. I'm happy not to do it again if you don't like it, but I'm happy to do it again because it makes editing so much easier when I can just edit like a couple of minutes at a time as I record it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. As always, take care. My name is Scott. Hope you're well. Take care of yourselves and stay safe. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know down in the comments below, or subscribe to my channel and let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, and I'll see you all on Monday for the next episode of Supernatural. Bye, guys.